In the marketplaces of Galilee, grain was not sold in tidy, sealed bags or neat plastic packages like what we have in our supermarkets, but they were scooped from from large baskets into whatever container you brought from home. A standard measure, usually a smaller household bowl, was used to fill your bags before your own very eyes. But how it was filled made all the difference. A stingy merchant would pour the grain in loosely and stop it when the container looked full. Air pockets remained. Space was wasted. It appeared full and generous, but it was not. But an honest seller, however, would press the grain down firmly with his hands and would lift and shake the container so the kernels settled into every hidden gap. And then he would pour more on top until it formed a small mound above the rim, threatening to spill into your cloak. You went home knowing you had received more than you expected. Everyone knew the difference between a generous merchant and a stingy one. A dishonest seller would avoid pressing it down. He would leave space inside, selling appearance rather than fullness. But the generous seller made sure the measure could not hold anymore. And the buyer walked away not just satisfied, but grateful. And Jesus uses that image when speaking about mercy. He's essentially asking, when you measure other people, are you a loose poured person or a press it down person? We often imagine ourselves generous until maybe someone scratches our car in the parking lot, or forgets our birthday, or interrupts us mid-sentence, or says something careless. Suddenly, our measuring cup shrinks dramatically. We become accountants of other people's faults. We calculate interest. We keep emotional receipts. A priest friend once told me about a parish council meeting that grew heated, and one member stormed out, offended by something trivial. The next Sunday, the pastor said something in his homily. Some of us are like overfilled teacups, he said. A small bump and everything spills out. The council member later, he admitted, well, I think my cup had more ego than tea that day. And that is the thing about mercy. It presses down pride. It shakes loose resentment. It makes room where there was only air. There's a beautiful story from the early church fathers about Abba Moses, a monk who had a violent past before his conversion. And when the community gathered to judge another brother who had sinned, Moses arrived carrying a leak sack of sand on his shoulder. And as he walked, sand poured out behind him. And when asked what he was doing, he replied, my sins run out behind me, and I do not see them. Yet I am coming to judge my brother. No condemnation followed that day. And that image is worth carrying through this Lent. We often want truckloads of understanding for ourselves and teaspoons for others. You don't know what I am going through, we say. But rarely do we ask what they are going through. Our measure expands or shrinks depending on whose hands are holding the cup. Jesus is not asking us to ignore wrongdoing. He's asking us to fill the container differently. The measure we use slowly becomes the measure we believe God uses on us. If we are tight-fisted, we imagine God as tight-fisted. If we are generous, we begin to trust that God is generous. So this Lent, perhaps the real fast is from small measurements. Shake those loose grudges. Press down kindness. Keep grace until it overflows. Because in the end, we're all standing in the same marketplace, holding out our empty bowls before God. Amen.